The Eyes of Hope. Part 1. The Quiet Village. There was a small village. The village was in a beautiful valley. Green mountains were all around the village. A small river was near the village. The river gave water to the fields. The fields were full of rice. The people in the village were happy. They were farmers. They worked hard in the fields every day. Her name was May. May was a young girl. She was 10 years old. She lived in the village with her family. She had a mother, a father, and a small brother. Her brother's name was An. He was 5 years old. May loved her family very much. She loved her village, too. Every morning, May woke up early. The sun was not in the sky. She helped her mother in the kitchen. They made breakfast. They made rice and soup. Then, her father and mother went to the rice fields. May took care of her brother. And they played together. They had a small dog. The dog's name was Lucky. Lucky was a good dog. He played with May and An. The village was always full of life. The children played in the street. The farmers sang songs in the fields. The river flowed with clear water. The trees were green. The flowers were bright. It was a happy place. But one year, something changed. The rain did not come. The sky was blue every day. There were no clouds. The sun was very hot. The river became smaller and smaller. The water was not clear anymore. It was brown. The fields started to change. The green rice plants became yellow. Then, they became brown. The ground was dry and hard. There were cracks in the earth. The farmers were worried. They looked at the sky every day. They waited for rain, but the rain did not come. The village became quiet. The farmers did not sing songs anymore. They sat in their houses. They looked sad. The children did not play in the street. It was too hot. The flowers were not bright. They were dry and dead. The trees lost their green leaves. May was sad. She saw the sad faces of her parents. Her father came home from the field early. There was no work to do. Her mother saved water. They only used a little water every day. The big water jars in their house were almost empty. When will the rain come? May asked her mother. Her mother looked at her. Her eyes were sad. I don't know, my dear. We must hope. We must be strong. Hope. It was a word May heard a lot, but it was hard to feel hope. Everything was dry. Everything was quiet. The happy village was gone. Now, it was a sad, quiet village. And her little brother did not understand. He wanted to play. He wanted to run. Why can't we play outside, May? He asked. It's too hot. And May said, and we must save our energy. Lucky, their dog, was quiet too. He did not run and jump. He stayed in the shade of the house. He looked tired. May looked at the mountains. The green mountains were now brown. They looked tired, too. The river was just a small, muddy line. It was not a river anymore. Every day was the same. Hot sun, blue sky, no rain. The food became less. The water was precious. The people in the village shared what they had, but they did not have much. The eyes of the people were full of worry. There was no light in their eyes. There was no smile on their faces. May missed the smiles. She missed the songs. She missed the green fields. She sat near the window of her small house. She looked at the dry path. A dry leaf moved in the hot wind. It was a lonely sound. The village was a lonely place now. May felt a tear on her cheek. She was a young girl, but she felt the sadness of her village in her heart. She wanted to do something. But what could a small girl do? She closed her eyes. She tried to remember the green fields. She tried to remember the sound of the river. She tried to remember the happy songs. But it was difficult. The sadness was too big. The silence was too loud. Part 2. A small sound. One afternoon, May was walking home. She went to see her grandmother. Her grandmother lived at the other end of the village. May brought her some rice and a little water. Her grandmother was old and could not walk well. The sun was very hot. The path was dusty. May walked slowly. She looked at the ground. She did not want to see the dry fields. She did not want to see the sad houses. As she walked past an old, empty barn, she heard a sound. It was a very small sound. A weak sound. Mew. Mew. May stopped. She looked around. She saw nothing. She thought maybe she imagined it. She started to walk again. Mew. Mew. There it was again. It was real. The sound came from behind the old barn. May was curious. She walked to the barn. She looked behind it. There was a pile of old straw. The sound came from the straw. May moved some of the straw carefully, and then she saw it. It was a tiny puppy. It was so small. It was white with brown spots. It was very thin. Its eyes were closed. It was shaking. "Oh, you poor thing," May whispered. She looked around. Where was its mother? There were no other dogs. The puppy was all alone. It was weak. It needed help. May gently picked up the puppy. It was so light. It felt like a little ball of fur. The puppy made the small sound again. It was hungry and scared. May held the puppy close to her. She wanted to make it feel safe. "It's okay," she said softly. "I will help you." She did not have any food for a puppy. She did not have any water. She only had the empty bowl from her grandmother's house. She decided to take the puppy home. Her mother would know what to do. Her mother was always kind to animals. May walked home faster. She held the puppy carefully in her arms. It was so small and fragile. She could feel its little heart beating. When she got home, her mother was in the kitchen. She was counting the last potatoes. "Mother," May said quietly. Her mother looked up. She saw the small thing in May's arms. "What is that?" "May, I found him. He was behind the old barn. He is all alone. He is very weak," May explained. Her mother came closer. She looked at the puppy. She saw how thin it was. She touched its head gently. "The poor little creature," she said. May's heart was beating fast. She was worried her mother would say they could not keep him. They did not have much food. They did not have much water. How could they feed a puppy? But her mother's eyes were kind. "We must help him," she said. "Bring him inside." May felt a wave of relief. She smiled for the first time in many days. They made a small bed for the puppy in a basket. They used an old, soft cloth. May's mother took a little bit of their precious milk. They did not have much milk, but she warmed it up. She put a little milk on her finger and gave it to the puppy. The puppy was too weak to drink, but it licked the milk from her finger. A tiny pink tongue came out and licked the milk. It was a good sign. May sat next to the basket for a long time. She watched the puppy. After a little milk, it stopped shaking so much. It fell asleep. It was a deep sleep. Later that evening, the puppy woke up. It opened its eyes. May looked into its eyes. They were big and brown. They were not full of worry like the eyes of the people in the village. They were not sad like the eyes of her mother. In the puppy's eyes, May saw something different. She saw a little light, a little spark. It was a look of trust. It was a look of life. It was a look of hope. The puppy looked at May. It did not know about the drought. It did not know about the dry fields. It only knew that it was safe now. It was warm. It was not alone. May felt something change in her heart. Looking into those small, hopeful eyes, she felt a little bit of hope herself. It was a small feeling, like the small puppy, but it was there. "What will you name him?" her mother asked. May thought for a moment. She looked at the puppy's eyes again, the eyes that gave her a new feeling. "I will call him Hyvng," May said. In her language, Hyvng meant hope. Her mother smiled a small, gentle smile. "Hope," she repeated. "That is a beautiful name." From that day, Hyvng became a part of their family. He was a small light in a dark time, and for May, he was a reason to believe that things could get better. Part 3, the old story. Hyvng, the little puppy, grew stronger every day. May took good care of him. She gave him a little of her own food. She shared her water with him. Hyvng was a happy puppy. He started to play. He chased his tail. He chewed on an old rope. His energy was a new thing in the quiet house. And May's little brother loved Hyvng. They played together on the floor of the house. Anne's laughter was a sound that May missed. Now, the house was not so silent. May spent all her time with Hyvng. When she felt sad about the drought, she looked at him. He would look back at her with his bright, hopeful eyes, and May would feel a little stronger. Hope was not just a name, it was a feeling. One evening, May was sitting with her grandmother. Her grandmother was telling stories. She told stories about the village when she was a young girl. The river was so big and strong, her grandmother said. Her voice was weak, but her eyes were bright with memory. And the trees in the mountains were so green, they touched the sky. "The mountains are brown now, grandmother," May said sadly. "Yes, my child," her grandmother said. She held May's hand. Her skin was soft and wrinkled. "This is not the first time the rain has forgotten us. It happened a long time ago, when I was a little girl." May was surprised. "It happened before?" "Yes. The fields were dry. The river was gone. The people were afraid. They thought the village would die." "What happened?" May asked. She leaned closer. Hyvng was sleeping at her feet. "My mother, your great-grandmother, was a wise woman," her grandmother said. She told us an old story, a story about the heart of the mountain. The heart of the mountain? May asked. Yes. The story says that deep inside the tallest mountain, there is a place where water is born. It is a secret spring. The story calls it the river of life. It never stops. Even when the sky is empty, the river of life always flows. May's eyes were wide. A river that never stops? Is it real? Her grandmother smiled. It is an old story, my child. A legend. My mother said it was a story of hope, to remind us that even in dry times, life is still there, hidden. Did anyone try to find it? May asked. Oh, yes. Some men from the village went into the mountains. They looked for many days, but the mountains are big and the paths are difficult. They found nothing. They came back tired and with less hope than before. May was quiet. She looked at the tall mountain outside the window. The sun was setting behind it. The mountain looked like a big, sleeping giant. But my mother always believed, her grandmother continued. She said they did not find it because they did not look with the right eyes. She said you must have hope in your heart to find the river of life. Hope in your heart. The words stayed with May. She looked down at the sleeping puppy, ing. Hope. That night, May could not sleep. She lay on her mat and looked at the ceiling. The story of the river of life was in her mind. A secret spring. Water that never stops. Was it just a story? Or was it real? The men from the village did not find it. They were strong men. She was just a small girl. How could she find it? But then she thought about her grandmother's words. You must have hope in your heart. The men who went looking were afraid. They were losing hope. Maybe that was the problem. May felt a new idea growing in her mind. It was a small idea, a little spark, but it felt important. She had ing. She had hope. Maybe, just maybe, she could try. Maybe she could look for the river of life. It was a crazy idea. A little girl and a small puppy going into the big mountains. It was dangerous. She was afraid. But then she thought about her village. She thought about the dry fields and the sad faces. She thought about her family sharing their last potatoes. They could not live like this for much longer. They needed a miracle. Maybe the river of life was the miracle. She sat up. The moon was bright outside. It made shadows in the room. She looked at ing, sleeping peacefully in his basket. His little chest moved up and down. He was so calm, so full of life. We have to try, she whispered to him. We have to. The idea was not small anymore. It was big and bright in her mind. It was a plan. She did not know how she would do it. She did not know the way, but she knew she had to try. For her family, for her village, for the hope she saw in a little puppy's eyes. She would go to the mountain. She would find the river of life. Part 4, A Secret Plan. The next morning, May woke up with a new feeling. It was not sadness. It was not worry. It was determination. She had a secret plan, and it made her feel strong. She could not tell her parents. They would be too worried. They would not let her go. This had to be her secret. Her secret and IVNG's secret. She started to prepare. She had to be clever. She had to be quiet. First, she needed a map. She went to her grandmother's house again. Grandmother, she said, can you tell me more about the mountain? The one from the story. Her grandmother smiled. You liked that story, did you? Yes, May said. Where is the tallest mountain? Her grandmother pointed with a shaky finger. That one. The one that looks like a sleeping cat. May looked. One of the mountains did look a bit like a cat, resting in the sun. The story said the river of life is in its heart, her grandmother said. On the other side of the mountain. The side that faces the morning sun. This was important information. The other side of the mountain. Can you draw it for me? May asked. Draw the mountain and the path you remember. Her grandmother was happy to do it. She liked drawing. She took a piece of old paper and a piece of charcoal. She drew the shape of the mountain. She drew the path that went from the village into the forest. This is the hunter's path, she said. It goes into the forest. After that, I do not know. The men who looked for the river made their own path. She drew a line that stopped. Be careful of the whispering woods. The trees are very old and tall. The wind makes strange sounds there. May looked at the simple drawing. It was not a real map, but it was a start. It was a guide. She folded the paper carefully and put it in her pocket. Thank you, grandmother, she said. Next, she needed food and water. This was difficult. Food and water were very precious. She could not just take them every day, at every meal. May saved a little bit of her food. She saved a small piece of dried fish. She saved a spoonful of rice and wrapped it in a leaf. She hid the food in a small cloth bag in her room. It was not much, but it was something. Water was harder. Her mother watched the water jar carefully, but May found a way. When she went to get water from the village well, she filled her small bottle. The well had very little water, but there was still some. She told her mother she was thirsty and drank some, but she saved most of it. She hid the small bottle with her food. She also needed a good bag. She found an old bag that her father used for seeds. It was strong. She put her secret supplies inside: the small packets of food, the bottle of water, the charcoal map. She also packed a warm scarf, because the nights in the mountains could be cold. And she packed the small rope that Hyvng liked to chew. A rope could be useful. Hyvng watched her with his curious eyes. He seemed to know that something was happening. He stayed close to May all the time. A few days passed. May's bag was ready. She had a little food and a little water. She had her map. She felt ready. She was also very scared. Her heart beat fast when she thought about the big mountains and the whispering woods. She chose a day to leave. It was the day of the weekly market in the next town. Her parents would go to the market. They hoped to trade some old tools for some food. They would be gone all day. It was her chance. She would leave in the morning and she would have the whole day. She hoped to find the river quickly and come back. The night before, she could not sleep well. She hugged Hyvng close. "Are you ready for an adventure?" she whispered to him. He licked her chin. It felt like a yes. She thought about her family. She loved them so much. She was doing this for them. She wrote a small note. "Dear Mother and Father, please do not worry. I have got to find help for our village. I am with Hyvng. We are strong. I will come back soon. I love you, May." She would leave the note on her bed. In the morning, her parents got ready to go to the market. Her mother hugged her. "Be a good girl, May. Take care of him." "I will, Mother," May said. Her voice was shaking a little. "We will be back before the sun goes down," her father said. May watched them walk down the dusty path until they were small dots in the distance. Her heart felt heavy. She was doing a big, dangerous thing. She went back inside, and was still sleeping. She looked at her little brother. She felt a pang of sadness. She would miss him. She picked up her bag. It felt heavy on her small shoulder. She went to her room and left a note on her mat. Then she went to the basket where Hyvng was sleeping. "Come on, Hyvng," she whispered. "It's time." The puppy woke up instantly. He wagged his tail. He was ready for anything. May opened the door of the house quietly. She looked back one last time. Then, with her small dog by her side, she stepped out into the early morning light. Her journey to find the river of life had begun. Part 5. The Whispering Woods. The sun was low in the sky. The air was still cool. May and Hyvng walked out of the village. No one saw them leave. The village was quiet and sleepy. May followed the path from her grandmother's map. It was the hunter's path. The path was narrow and rocky. It went away from the village and towards the forest at the base of the mountains. At first, the land was dry and open. There were only dry bushes and rocks. The sun started to get warmer. May put on her hat. Hyvng walked happily beside her. His little nose was sniffing everything. For him, it was a great adventure. After about an hour, they reached the forest. The trees were tall, but their leaves were brown and dry. There was not much shade. The forest was quiet. Too quiet. May could not hear any birds. She looked at her map. The path went straight into the forest. This was the start of the whispering woods that her grandmother talked about. May took a deep breath. She held the strap of her bag tightly. "Let's go, Hyvng," she said. Her voice was a small sound in the big forest. They walked into the woods. The trees were very close together. The sunlight could not reach the ground easily. It was darker here, and cooler. A small wind started to blow. The wind moved through the dry leaves of the trees. It made a soft sound. Shush, shush. It sounded like people whispering. May understood why it was called the Whispering Woods. The sound was a little scary. It felt like the trees were talking about her. She walked faster. Hyvng stayed very close to her feet. He was not running and sniffing anymore. He seemed to feel the strange atmosphere of the woods too. The path was covered in dry leaves. Every step made a loud crunching sound. Crunch, crunch, crunch. It felt like she was making too much noise. She walked for a long time. The whispering sound was always there. Sometimes it was soft. Sometimes it was loud. She tried to be brave. She thought about her family. She thought about the water. After a while, She felt tired. Her legs hurt. She decided to rest. She found a big rock and sat down. She opened her bag and took out her water bottle. She drank a little water. Then she poured a few drops into her hand for Vng. He licked it up quickly. She gave him a tiny piece of dried fish. She ate a small rice ball. The food gave her some energy. She looked around. The trees were so tall. Their branches looked like long, thin arms. The whispering sound continued. Shush, shush. May felt a little lonely. She was all alone in this big, strange forest. She missed her home. She missed her brother. She looked at Vng. He finished his fish and was now sitting with his head on her lap. He looked up at her with his big, brown eyes. They were not scared. They were just looking at her, full of trust. Seeing his calm face made May feel better. "You're a brave dog," she whispered. He wagged his tail. She was not alone. She had Vng. She had hope. She stood up. "Okay, we must continue," she said. They started walking again. The path became harder to see. It was covered with more leaves. Sometimes, May was not sure if she was on the right path. She looked at her grandmother's map. The map just showed a straight line. So she kept walking straight, deeper into the woods. The sun was higher in the sky now. It was the middle of the day. But in the whispering woods, it was still dark and shadowy. The whispering of the leaves never stopped. May started to sing a little song. It was a song her mother used to sing to her. "Little star, in the sky, shining bright, way up high." Her voice was small and shaky, but it was a human sound. It made the whispering of the trees seem less scary. She sang the song again and again. It made her feel braver. Vng seemed to like it. He walked with a little more energy. They walked for what felt like many hours. May's feet were sore. She was getting very tired. She wondered if she would ever get out of this forest. Then, she saw something. Ahead of her, through the trees, she saw a bright light. It was not the shadowy light of the forest. It was bright, clear sunlight. Her heart started to beat faster. Was it the end of the woods? She started to walk faster. She pushed past low branches. The light got brighter. The whispering sound of the leaves started to fade. And then, she stepped out of the trees. She was standing at the edge of the forest. In front of her was a wide, open space. And beyond that, rising up high into the sky, was the mountain. The Sleeping Cat Mountain. She had made it through the whispering woods. She looked back at the dark forest. It looked scary from the outside. But she did it. She and Vng did it. She felt a surge of pride and relief. She sat down on the grassy ground. The sun felt warm and friendly on her skin. She gave Vng a big hug. "We did it, Vng. We are here." The puppy licked her face, wagging his whole body. He was happy because she was happy. They were at the foot of the mountain. The first part of her journey was over. Now, the hard part began. She had to climb. She had to find the heart of the mountain. She had to find the river of life. Part 6. The Mountain Path. The mountain was much bigger up close. It was huge. It was made of rock and earth. There were some dry bushes and small, tough trees growing on its side. It looked steep and difficult. May rested for a while at the edge of the forest. She ate another small rice ball and gave Vng some more fish. They both drank some water. She had to be careful with her water. She did not have much left. She looked at her grandmother's map. The map showed the mountain, but no path. Her grandmother had said the men from the village made their own path. May had to find her own way. She looked at the mountain carefully. She needed to find the easiest way to go up. Some parts were very steep, almost like a wall of rock. Other parts were less steep, with rocks and earth she could climb. "We need to go to the other side," she told Vng, who was chasing a beetle. "The side that faces the morning sun." From where she was on the west side of the mountain. The sun was now in the afternoon sky. Behind her, she needed to go around the mountain to the east side. She saw a narrow ledge that seemed to go around the base of the mountain. It looked like a small path made by animals. It was better than climbing straight up. "Okay, let's go this way," she decided. The path was narrow. On one side was the tall mountain wall. On the other side was a steep drop down to the forest. May walked very carefully. She held onto the rock wall sometimes. Vng was small and agile. He had no problem. He walked ahead of her, then waited for her to catch up. They walked for a long time. The sun moved across the sky. It was getting lower. May knew she did not have much daylight left. She started to worry. She could not climb the mountain in the dark. It was too dangerous. She needed to find a safe place to sleep for the night. As she came around a large rock, she saw it. It was a small cave. It was not very deep, just a hollow in the side of the mountain. But it was big enough for a small girl and a puppy. It would be a safe place to rest, protected from the wind and the night's cold. "Look, HVNG, a house for tonight," she said, her voice full of relief. The cave was dry inside. The floor was sandy. It was perfect. May put her bag down. She was so tired. Her whole body ached. She sat at the entrance of the cave and watched the sun go down. The sky turned orange and pink and purple. It was beautiful. From up here, she could see the whole valley. She could see her village. It looked so small and far away. She thought about her parents and her brother. Were they home yet? Did they find her note? Were they worried? A tear rolled down her cheek. She felt very far from home. HVNG came and licked her hand. He rested his head on her knee. She stroked his soft fur. His presence was a comfort. It reminded her why she was here. She was here to help them. She had to be strong. As the sky got dark, it also got cold. The mountain air was chilly. May was glad she brought her warm scarf. She wrapped it around her shoulders. She and HVNG huddled together in the back of the cave for warmth. May ate the last of her ice. She saved the last piece of fish for the morning. She drank a little more water. Her bottle was almost empty now. This was a problem. She needed to find water tomorrow. She hoped the river of life was real. She hoped she could find it soon. She lay down on the sandy floor. HVNG curled up into a small ball beside her. The night was dark and full of stars. May had never seen so many stars. Without the lights of the village, the sky was a black blanket covered in diamonds. She heard strange noises in the night. The sound of the wind, the call of a night bird, the sound of a small rock falling somewhere on the mountain. At first, she was scared, but she held HVNG close. His warm body was a comfort. She closed her eyes and thought about the river of life. She imagined the sound of flowing water. The thought was so pleasant that she finally fell asleep. She dreamed of water. She dreamed of a cool, clear river flowing over rocks. She dreamed of green fields and happy songs. When she woke up, the first light of morning was in the sky. The east side of the sky was pink. She had to go to the east side of the mountain. She felt better after a night's sleep. Her body was still sore, but her mind was clear. Today was the day. She had to find the river today. She ate her last piece of fish and shared it with HVNG. She drank the last few drops of her water. The bottle was empty. Now, finding water was urgent. "Okay, HVNG," she said, standing up and stretching. "Let's go find the river of life." She picked up her bag. It was much lighter now. With the morning sun on her face, she started walking again on the narrow path, full of a new day's hope. Part 7, A Sign of Life. May and HVNG continued their journey around the mountain. The path was still narrow and rocky. May had to watch her feet carefully. The sun rose higher in the sky. It was the morning sun. She was on the east side of the mountain now. This was the side her grandmother told her about. The heart of the mountain should be here somewhere. But where? The mountain was just rock and dry earth. There were no signs of water. May started to feel worried again. Her throat was dry. She was thirsty. HVNG was thirsty too. He was panting, his pink tongue hanging out. "Water. We need to find water," May said to herself. She looked up the side of the mountain. It was so big. The river of life could be anywhere. How could she find a secret spring on this giant mountain? She felt a moment of despair. Maybe this was a foolish idea. Maybe it was just a children's story. Maybe there was no river of life. The men from the village did not find it. Why did she think she could? She sat down on a rock. She felt like crying. She was tired, thirsty, and lost. HVNG came to her. He pushed his wet nose into her hand. He whined a little, a soft sound. May looked at him. His tail gave a small wag. He looked at her with his trusting eyes. His eyes were not full of despair. They were full of hope. As always, he was telling her not to give up. May took a deep breath. "You're right," she told the little puppy. "We can't give up now. We came so far." She stood up. She had to think. Her grandmother said the men did not find it because they did not look with the right eyes. What did that mean? Maybe it meant you had to look for small signs. The men were probably looking for a big river, but a secret spring might be small and hidden. She started to walk again, but this time, she walked slowly. She did not look at the top of the mountain. She looked at the ground. She looked at the rocks. She looked for anything different, anything that was not brown and dry. She walked for another hour. Her head started to hurt from the sun. Her throat felt like sandpaper. And then she saw it. It was small, very small. It was a tiny green plant. It was growing in a crack between two large rocks. In this whole landscape of brown and yellow, here was a tiny patch of bright, living green. May's heart jumped. A plant cannot grow without water. She ran to the rocks. She touched the small green leaves. They were real. They were alive. "Ivng, look," she shouted. The puppy ran to her, wagging his tail. He sniffed the plant. Water had to be near. It had to be. May looked at the rocks carefully. Where was the water coming from? She could not see any water, but the ground in the crack, near the plant's roots, was a little dark. It was a little damp. The crack in the rocks went upwards. It was a long, thin line going up the mountain face. The water must be coming from up there, she thought. This was it. This was the sign she was looking for. This was the clue. But the rock face was steep. It was not a path. It was a wall of rock. How could she climb it? She looked closely. There were cracks and ledges, places for her hands and feet. It would be a difficult climb, a very dangerous climb. If she fell, she would be badly hurt. She was scared. Her hands were sweating. She looked down at the little green plant. It was a sign of life, a sign of hope. It was telling her that she was close. The river of life was up there. She was sure of it. She had to try. She took off her bag. It was mostly empty anyway. She would leave it here. She only needed the rope. She tied the rope around her waist. Maybe it would be useful. She looked at Ivng. "You have to wait here," she told him. "It's too dangerous for you. Be a good boy and wait for me." The puppy whined. He did not want her to go. He wanted to come with her. "I will be back," she promised. "I will be back with water." She gave him one last pat on the head. Then she turned to the rock face. She took a deep breath. She put her hand on a rock ledge. She put her foot in a crack. And she started to climb. Part 8. The sound of water. Climbing was the hardest thing May had ever done. The rock was rough against her hands. Her fingers hurt. Her arms and legs trembled with effort. She moved slowly, very slowly. Hand, foot, hand, foot. She tested every hole before she put her weight on it. She did not look down. She only looked up, at the crack in the rock that she was following. The sun was hot on her back. Sweat dripped down her face and into her eyes. She was so thirsty. Her mouth was completely dry. A few times, her foot slipped. Her heart jumped into her throat. She held on tight, her fingers white. She waited for her heart to slow down. Then she continued. She thought about giving up. It was too hard, too dangerous. But then she thought of the little green plant, and she thought of Ivng waiting for her, and she thought of her village. She had to keep going. She climbed for a long time. It felt like hours. Her muscles screamed in protest. Then, she felt something. The rock under her hand was wet. She stopped. She touched it again. It was definitely wet. And cool. Her heart started to beat with excitement. She was getting closer. She kept climbing. The crack in the rock was wider here, and there was more moisture. A thin, dark line of wetness trickled down the rock. And then she heard it. At first, it was a very faint sound. So faint, she thought it was the wind. But it was a different sound. A soft, musical sound. Tinkle, tinkle. It was the sound of water. The sound gave her new strength. She forgot about her sore muscles. She forgot about her fear. She climbed faster. The sound got louder. Tinkle, plink, tinkle. She pulled herself up over a large ledge, and she saw it. It was a small cave, hidden behind a curtain of hanging vines. The sound of water was coming from inside the cave. May crawled onto the ledge. Her legs were shaking. She was breathing hard. She carefully pushed aside the green vines. Inside the cave, it was cool and dark. And in the center of the cave, water was dripping from the ceiling. It dripped from a long, pointed rock that looked like an icicle. It dripped into a small pool on the cave floor. Plink, plink, plink. The pool was made of smooth, gray stone. The water in it was perfectly clear. So clear, she could see the bottom. The pool was not very big, but it was full. A small stream of water flowed out of the pool, disappeared into a crack in the floor, and trickled down the rock face. This was the water that fed the little green plant. This was it. This was the river of life. It was not a big, rushing river like in the stories. It was a small, secret, quiet spring. But it was real, and the water never stopped. Plink, plink, plink. May started to cry, but these were not tears of sadness. They were tears of joy. Tears of relief. She crawled to the edge of the pool. She looked at her reflection in the clear water. She saw a tired, dirty girl with leaves in her hair, but her eyes were shining. She cupped her hands and dipped them into the water. It was so cold. It was the most wonderful feeling in the world. She brought the water to her lips and drank. The water was sweet and fresh. It tasted like life itself. She drank and drank. It was the best water she had ever tasted. She had found it. Against all odds, a small girl and her puppy had found a legend. She laughed. Her laugh echoed in the small cave. She was so happy. Now she had to get the water to High-V-N-G. And then, she had to get it to her village. The hard part was not over, but she had found the source. She had found hope. A real, flowing, life-giving hope. She looked at the dripping water. It was a constant, steady rhythm, a heartbeat, the heart of the mountain. The story was true, and she was the one who found it. Part 9, A Promise Kept. After drinking the cool, clear water, May felt a new energy flow through her. Her thirst was gone. Her body felt strong again. Her first thought was of High-V-N-G. He was waiting for her. He was thirsty. But how could she carry the water down? She did not have her bag or her water bottle. She looked around the cave. There was nothing she could use. Then she had an idea. The vines. She went to the entrance of the cave. She pulled at the thick, green vines that covered the opening. Some of them had large, waxy leaves. The leaves were shaped like cups. She carefully picked a few of the largest leaves. They were strong and flexible. She could use them to carry water. It was not a lot of water, but it was enough for High-V-N-G. She went back to the spring. She filled one of the large leaves with water. She had to hold it very carefully so it would not spill. Now, she had to climb down. Climbing down was often harder than climbing up. She had to be even more careful. And she was carrying water. She tucked the other leaves into the top of her shirt. She held the water-filled leaf in one hand. She used her other hand to hold onto the rock. She went slowly, step by step. It was a difficult and slow process. A few times, she spilled some of the water, but she was determined. Finally, after what felt like a very long time, her feet touched the ground. She was back at the bottom of the rock face. High-V-N-G, she called. A happy bark answered her. The little puppy came running from behind a rock. He jumped up on her, wagging his tail so hard his whole body wiggled. I'm back, and I brought you something, May said, laughing. She knelt down and held out the leaf full of water. High-V-N-G saw the water and started to drink immediately. He was so thirsty, he drank all the water in the leaf. Then he licked the leaf clean. May smiled. She had kept her promise. She rested for a few minutes. She gave High-V-N-G a big hug. You are a good boy, she said. Now, she had to think about the next step. The village. How could she bring the water to the village? The spring was so high up on the mountain. She could not carry water down in leaves every day. They needed a better way. She looked at the rock face where the water trickled down. The water disappeared into the ground at the bottom. But what if they could catch it? What if they could guide it? She remembered something from her village. The farmers used long pieces of bamboo to bring water from the river to the fields. They cut the bamboo in half to make a channel. Bamboo. There was no bamboo on the mountain, but there was bamboo in the forest. The Whispering Woods. A new plan formed in her mind. It was a big plan. She could not do it alone. She needed help. She needed the people of her village. She had to go back. She had to tell them what she found. Some people might not believe her. They might think it was just a child's story. The men had looked and found nothing. But she had proof. She looked at the little green plant that started it all. She carefully dug it up, making sure to keep the roots in the damp earth around them. She wrapped it in one of the big leaves from the cave. This would be her proof. A living, green plant from a dry, brown mountain. She put the plant carefully into her bag. She put on her bag, which felt much lighter now. Come on, High-V-N-G, she said. We have to go home. The journey back seemed faster. She was not scared of the Whispering Woods anymore. She walked with purpose. She knew the way. The whispering of the trees did not sound scary. It just sounded like the wind. She walked through the forest and out onto the dry plains. The sun was setting. The sky was turning orange. In the distance, she could see her village. She saw the smoke from a few cooking fires. They were home. Her parents were home. She started to run. High-V-N-G ran beside her. As she got closer to the village, a man saw her. He was one of the farmers. His eyes opened wide. May, it's May, he shouted. People started to come out of their houses. They had been looking for her. They had been so worried. Her parents ran towards her. Her mother was crying. Her father's face was full of relief. "May, oh, May, where have you been?" her mother cried, hugging her so tightly she could barely breathe. "We were so worried," her father said, his voice thick with emotion. "I'm okay," May said. "I'm okay. I have something to tell you. Something wonderful." All the villagers gathered around. They were all talking at once. They were happy to see her safe, but they were also confused. Where did she go? May stood in the middle of the crowd. She was just a small girl, but she felt tall. She took a deep breath. "I went to the mountain," she said, her voice clear and strong. "I went to find the river of life." A silence fell over the crowd. They looked at her. Some looked at her with pity. They thought the heat had made her confused. "My child," the village elder said gently, "the river of life is just a story." "No," May said, "it's real. I found it." She opened her bag. She carefully took out the small green plant, still wrapped in the waxy leaf. She held it up for everyone to see. "I found this on the mountain," she said. "It was growing out of the rock. There is water there, a spring. It never stops." The villagers stared at the plant. It was so green, so full of life. They had not seen a plant so healthy in many months. They looked at the damp earth around its roots. They looked at May's face. Her clothes were torn and dirty. She was tired, but her eyes were shining with a light they had not seen in a long time. It was the light of truth, the light of hope. Her father looked at the plant, and then at his daughter. He saw the determination in her eyes. He saw the truth. "I believed her," he said, his voice strong. May's mother looked at her daughter, and she nodded, tears of pride in her eyes. "I believe her, too." One by one, the villagers started to believe. The little green plant was proof. The look in May's eyes was proof. A small girl, with her small dog, had done what the strong men could not do. She had not looked with her eyes. She had looked with her heart. And she had found hope. Part 10, The River Returns. The village was full of excitement. It was a feeling no one had felt for a long time. Hope, real hope, had returned. The next morning, before the sun was up, a group of villagers gathered. It was May's father, and other strong men and women from the village. They carried axes and long knives. They were going to the forest to cut bamboo. May was the guide. She walked at the front of the group with her father. Vng trotted happily beside her. He seemed to know he was part of something important. May led them along the hunter's path and into the whispering woods. The villagers were quiet as they walked through the strange, dark forest. But they were not afraid. May was with them, and they had a purpose. May showed them the place where the bamboo grew thick and tall. The men started to work. The sound of axes echoed through the forest. Chop, chop, chop. It was a sound of action, a sound of hope. They cut many long pieces of bamboo. They split them in half, lengthwise, to create long, U-shaped channels. It was hard work, but no one complained. They worked together, laughing and talking. The silence of the village was broken. While they worked, May took her father to the mountain. She showed him the path she took. She showed him the steep rock face. Her father looked up at the high cliff. "You climbed this?" he asked. His voice was full of awe and a little fear. "Yes," May said simply. "I had to." He put his arm around his daughter. "You're the bravest person I know," he said. They could not climb the rock face with the bamboo. They needed to find another way. May and her father walked further around the base of the mountain, and they found it, a gentler slope. It was longer, and covered in loose rocks. But it was a possible way to get up the mountain without climbing. It took them 2 days. 2 days of hard work. They cut the bamboo. They carried it to the mountain. Then, a team of men, led by May's father, started to build the waterway. They started from the bottom, near the little green plant. They laid the bamboo channels end to end, creating a long line. They used rocks and mud to support them. They worked their way up the gentle slope, towards the secret cave. May stayed at the bottom with the other villagers. They made food for the workers. They took care of the children. Everyone had a job. Everyone was part of the miracle. Finally, the day came. The last piece of bamboo was in place. The channel reached all the way from the ground up to the ledge outside the cave. May's father went into the cave. He used a large rock to change the path of the small stream that flowed from the pool. Instead of disappearing into the crack in the floor, the water now flowed into the first piece of the bamboo channel. Everyone at the bottom of the mountain held their breath. They watched the long line of bamboo. They waited. For a moment, nothing happened. Then, a woman shouted, Look! A tiny trickle of water appeared at the end of the last bamboo piece. A few drops fell to the dry ground. Then more came. A small, steady stream of clear, cool water. It flowed out of the bamboo and onto the earth. A great cheer went up from the crowd. They laughed. They cried. They hugged each other. Water! They had water. The stream was small. It was not a big river, but it was enough. It was life. They worked quickly to dig a channel in the ground, to guide the water away from the mountain and towards their village. The water flowed happily in its new path. May knelt down and touched the water. It was the water from the heart of the mountain. The water she had found. She had done it. Ivng barked and jumped into the small stream, splashing water everywhere. May laughed and splashed him back. The water reached the village. They filled every pot, every jar, every bucket. They gave the water to their thirsty animals. They watered the small vegetable gardens behind their houses. The land would not heal in one day. It would take time for the fields to be green again. It would take time for the river to fill. But they had a start. They had water. And more importantly, they had hope. The village was transformed. The sad, quiet place was gone. Now, it was full of life and energy. The people smiled again. They sang songs as they worked. May was a hero. Everyone in the village thanked her. The village elder said she had the courage of a lion, and the wisdom of an old soul. But May did not feel like a hero. She was just a girl who loved her village. A girl who had found a friend. That evening, the whole village had a celebration. They made a big bonfire. They shared the food they had. They danced and sang under the stars. May sat with her family, watching the happy faces in the firelight. Ivng was sleeping at her feet, his belly full of food. Her mother hugged her. "We are so proud of you, May." Her father nodded. "You saved us all, you and your little dog." May looked at Ivng, the little puppy she found behind the barn, the little creature who was all alone. He had given her the courage to start her journey. He had reminded her what hope felt like. She looked into the fire. The flames danced and flickered. They were like the lights she had seen in the puppy's eyes. A small spark that can grow into a big, bright fire. The village still had hard work ahead, but they would face it together. They had water, they had each other, and they had hope. And it all started with a little girl who listened to an old story, and the loving, hopeful eyes of a small, lost puppy. The eyes of hope had shown them the way.